Hey guys, what is up? It's Jaran and welcome back to my channel. So for today we're doing something different. We're going to be reviewing these two flasks. Right here we have the THERMOFLASK and we have the AQUAFLASK. Small disclaimer, both of these flasks aren't mine. This blue one is my dad's and this pink one is my sister's flask. So if you're like me, I don't own a flask yet. I'm looking for which one should I buy. Should I buy the THERMOFLASK or the AQUAFLASK? What's the difference between the two, and how much is the difference between these two? First, we're gonna go with the THERMOFLASK, so we'll leave this over here. THERMOFLASK, both flasks have been advertised to hold hot liquid for 12 hours and cold for about 24 hours. So for the THERMOFLASK, we have the THERMOFLASK logo at the top and the THERMOFLASK brand written on the side. We also have a removable rubber button which is included and about the same tone as the flask itself. So both flasks come with the same rubber bottoms. There are differences, so we're gonna take them off. This is the 40 ounce bottle. Both of them are 40 ounce, which is equal to, I don't know how many liters that is. I'll just put it up here because I'm not sure. So for the THERMOFLASK, we have a handlebar at the top and we have this screw at the top as well to open it up like that. So when you're drinking, it's gonna be like this. It's open almost all the way, so screwing that back, and to open the whole flask, the full top, just unscrew the top as well, and this is it. So first impressions are, it's good quality. I think this is a double wall aluminum as it is advertised. I'm not quite sure, so it's very big, you know. This is a good size to finish your water for a whole day. That's my first impressions on the THERMOFLASK. So next we have the AQUAFLASK, which is this one. This is the AQUAFLASK. So first impressions, good color, the logo is up top, the word AQUAFLASK is at the bottom as well, so we already see a difference between the two. The AQUAFLASK name is at the bottom, but it's actually lower than the one we can see on the THERMOFLASK. So the THERMOFLASK is, I think, at the right spot. This is it side by side. The AQUAFLASK word is a lot lower than the THERMOFLASK. At the rubber, there's also a difference because in here, the AQUAFLASK words are also found at the rubber and also the logo. And at the bottom, we have that small circular hole, I don't know, to release hot or cold temperatures. I'm not sure, I'm just assuming. And basically they're the same actually. On the handles at the top for the AQUAFLASK, it's a lot more easier to move. Like for me it's okay because it still stands up just as well as the THERMOFLASK. At some degree it does go down, so that's one thing to note. And it does have the same structure or way of unscrewing. It has the same one as the THERMOFLASK and as well as the top. Here it is. One comment on the AQUAFLASK though is whenever you have the rubber at the bottom, you can't really see the full logo at the side of the bottle. So that's where I assume the reason why the AQUAFLASK added the AQUAFLASK words on the rubber, because that does have the problem of not being able to see the whole AQUAFLASK words on the side of the bottle. For me, design wise, I think I'm gonna go with the THERMOFLASK on this one, because even if you have the rubber, you could still clearly see the THERMOFLASK words on here. That's the only difference I can think of, because both are literally quite the same. Design wise, that's the only difference. The logos are different as well. This is more minimalistic in my opinion, and this has a lot more things going on the logo. Design wise, THERMOFLASK for me. AQUAFLASK is good as well, if you don't mind the logos not being able to be seen when the rubber is on. You know, people with OCD or something, I think they would get a little bit bothered by that. I'm not sure, but for me as a designer, yeah, that doesn't appeal as much as the THERMOFLASK. So about the rubbers on the bottom, the THERMOFLASK has this big hole at the bottom. It's quite a big difference with the AQUAFLASK. The AQUAFLASK has the smaller hole at the bottom. So we're done with my first impressions of the bottles. It's fairly the same. So now we're gonna proceed with testing this. Since we're in the Philippines, the weather gets a bit hotter, and I think we're still at summertime, but there are occasional rains. So we're still gonna test these guys on how they can hold ice the longest. So we're gonna leave these bottles outside for about 24 hours and we're gonna check. So right now the time is 2:27 p.m. Thursday, July 8th. We're gonna be returning tomorrow to check which bottle would contain more ice after 24 hours. Let's go. Alright, so here we have our ice cubes, 2, 4, 6, 8. So that would be 8 ice cubes per flask. So we're gonna unscrew the THERMOFLASK first, put that down, and then put it one by one. So there's no water, just the ice itself. 8 ice cubes to be exact per flask. Shake it up a little bit, and yeah. Next we have the AQUAFLASK. Unscrew the top as well, put that there, and put in the remaining 8 ice cubes left. So yeah, all ice cubes on both flasks, and we'll see right after which flask would contain ice left. So yeah, there we go. And now we're gonna get ready for it to put it outside. A little shake first. So no, we're not going to heaven, we're going to our terrace. It's very hot out there, and we're just gonna let it sit on right under the sun. So here's a quick time lapse of that. So now we're back 24 hours later. It's 2:26, Friday, July 9. And yeah, let's get the 2 flasks we have left outside for a full 24 hours. So let's get it inside. Let's shake it up a bit and unscrew the top. And as you can see, there are no ice left but water. So that was kind of disappointing, to be honest. I thought there would at least be an ice or something. So next is the thermoflask. Unscrew the top. And yeah, no ice as well, just water. Here we have our iced coffee. This is a nice caramel macchiato made by my sister. Her cafe opens soon. Kape tayo, shout out. And here we have a thermometer. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to configure the thermometer to recognize cool temperatures, just body temperatures. So checking it on the inside of the AQUAFLASK doesn't register, but the outside it does. So maybe it's because it's far from the flask itself, from the water itself. So checking it again on the thermoflask, not much difference there. So I've decided to go outside and put it in this little cup thing. So we're gonna go with the thermoflask first, and we're gonna open it up, pour the water into this tiny cup. So I'm doing this to be able to recognize the temperature of the water inside the flasks. So that's the temperature of the flask on the outside. It still says low on the water. So right now we're getting a bit of temperature and still low on the water, but the outside it could still detect that it was like 34.4 or 34.5 degrees. So AQUAFLASK next. Pour it. Oh, sorry. Their top is a little bit loose than the thermoflask. So, alright. Checking the bottle, the flask. Yes, it still registers. The side of the cup still says low. Second try, still nothing. And the water still clearly doesn't recognize the temperature because it's too cold. As you can see, it fogs up the cup just like any water that would like come from a fridge or something, any cold water. Okay, so 24 hours has passed, and what do we think about our little experiment? So as you just saw, the AQUAFLASK surprisingly has outperformed the thermoflask. Surprisingly, I know. I was actually kind of rooting for the thermoflask to even have an ice left or something. Well, we're in the Philippines and it's hot. It's hot here. So part of me kind of expected that it's like I thought there's an 80% chance that all ice will be melted on both flasks, and just a little bit 20% of me thinking there could be a little bit of ice left, but turned out to have no ice. But surprisingly, after realizing that there were no ice left, the test that I made where the water is still cold, we saw that the AQUAFLASK had a colder water, yeah, in comparison to the thermoflask. So I kind of have a theory on why that happened. So as you can see, physical wise, both are clearly the same. Like there's really no difference, but the difference that I realized or I knew was with the rubbers at the bottom. So as you can see, both have a bit of dirt now because I left it in the turfs for 24 hours. Main difference would be if there were any explanation on why the AQUAFLASK had a colder water after 24 hours than the thermoflask. it could be because of the rubber at the bottom. For the thermoflask, the rubber has a big hole at the bottom, which I might assume that the cold temperature or the heat from the tiles got absorbed from the bottom. I don't know, I'm not a scientist, so I'm just assuming here. But for the AQUAFLASK, it has a small hole at the bottom, which means I think it keeps the coolness and just releases a small amount at the bottom, at the hole. So thermoflask, bigger hole, less colder. AQUAFLASK, smaller hole, colder for a bit longer. If I were to summarize it, it would be that. I'm actually glad that I did it with the rubbers on, because I know you might think, hey, what if you tried it without the rubbers? I would assume that I think both will have the same results, because I mean, they're actually the same build. Like, nothing is different other than the rubbers. After a few research from before, both are manufactured at China and both were designed in California. I don't really know if there's any relation or they are competitors with each other, or HydroFlask, I don't know. I haven't tested HydroFlask, so HydroFlask, if you wanna, I don't know, maybe try to send me one. Cause this is my sister's, this is my dad's. I don't have one. But for the first part of the video, I told you that I could be just like you guys, looking for a flask and don't really know which one is better, if it is an AQUAFLASK or the thermoflask. So this is actually kind of cool, because I was really rooting for the thermoflask because of design wise, they were pretty good with the result that it gave. Maybe it's because of the rubber. It didn't really give the result that I would have wanted. After 24 hours, the water in the thermoflask was actually room temperature water. I don't know, but yeah, if you don't mind, if you're not gonna leave the water for the ice for 24 hours, I mean, this is actually still a really good flask, to the extremes that it says that it could handle the cold water or ice for 24 hours. That's for the thermoflask. So I would consider this flask as the winner, the AQUAFLASK, because after 24 hours both didn't have ice, and after testing the temperatures of if the flasks still contained cold water, this definitely had the cooler water. Design wise, I'm still kind of picky, but I think I could get around from this if it was black or blue. So yeah, those are my thoughts on both flasks. If you were to ask me which one would I get, for now I would really like the AQUAFLASK, but I would really like to try the HydroFlask, but I think that's the most expensive flask out of the three. So I'm actually at the AQUAFLASK. I'm really feeling to buy the AQUAFLASK. So thank you guys for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe and watch my other videos, which I will put up here. Yeah, up here. Thanks for watching, and catch you guys in the next time. Ciao.